All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Monday, June 23rd on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, right here presented to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson, and this is All In Horns. We've got some good offseason talk for you and an update on the recruiting trail for Longhorn football. Some pretty big news broke yesterday afternoon, and about five-star edge rusher, a decommit from Oregon, Richard Wesley, committing to Texas. And now, Jake, you and I, we should probably preface this as though this is big news. It's great for the class of 2026. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. Whenever it is June recruiting and these players are committing to places, you take it with a grain of salt. You can't necessarily buy too much into the hype. You can't get too attached to these guys because flips happen all the time. It's a long ways away from National Signing Day. However, this is big news for Texas. Richard Wesley, the five-star edge, consensus top 10 at his position in the country and a top 5 player in the state of California. Again, this is the guy that flipped from Oregon, and he did the pool jumping video with Dan Lanning, and now they're jumping out of the pool, and he's raising the horns. So those recruiting videos are awful. It started with Brian Kelly, the really awkward like dancing thing as soon as he got to LSU, but these recruiting videos are really, really getting out of hand in terms of cringeworthy. And now Dan Lanning is just soggy sorrows, soaking wet next to the pool. No five-star recruit. Looks like a tool. But anyway, no fault to his own. But also a four-star defensive lineman as well. Really talk about hitting the recruiting trail on the defensive side of the ball there in that position, especially coming with transfers and all the other things. It's been a really busy offseason for that staff. But Vodney Cleveland, four-star decommit from Alabama. He decommitted back in December. It wasn't like it just happened a couple months ago, but back in December, decommitted from Alabama. He's the 8th ranked player in Alabama, 18th ranked defensive lineman in the nation, chose Texas over North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. Also, number 1 linebacker in the country, Tyler Atkinson, had a visit to Texas that apparently reports are all saying went well as well, but no sign on his commitment at all. But Jake, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these guys. We don't know too much about it, but we can just talk about what it does to the roster, what it does to the recruiting class. But let's start with five-star edge, Richard Wesley.
Yeah, first to kind of touch on the preface that you kind of brought up, and I think you and I we're all right with being wrong, but we try to be fairly consistent with our kind of thoughts and ideologies on the game and recruiting. And just like last year in the summer, and granted, there were Texas fans freaking out just a week ago because a couple guys committed to A&M. Just like last year during the summer where everyone's panicking, and I was like, why are you panicking? Stark has had a top 3 class every season at Texas, essentially. And he's proven that he gets guys late in the cycle. That's when he really pushes for commitments because that's when they matter the most. Otherwise, you're just recruiting a guy you've already got committed from summertime until the very end. And they ended up with the number 1 class last year, despite a complete and utter just kind of panic by a lot of the fan base during the summer. They ended up with the number 1 class.
I think I actually just responded to somebody. I can't remember what social media platform it was, but it had said something about Texas's recruiting. Oh, that's what it was. It was some guy quote tweeted the Lambos that were parked out on DKR, and he said this is a cheesy and cringe-worthy recruiting tactic that will ultimately make Texas look silly. And I was like, yeah, that number 1 recruiting class in 2025 looks real silly. The most recent recruiting class, number 1 in the country, just looks, it's just going to really bite Texas in the ass at the end of the day. It doesn't really, like, to me, is it a little cringy? Sure, it can be cringy, but does it work? Obviously, it's worked. Like, you can't really say that it's not that is just, for show, and Texas is just trying to flex its muscles and it's not turning into anything. No, it definitely is.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're a 16, 17-year-old kid, back when we were that age, we did a lot of stuff I look back on that I go, man, that was very cringy. Cringy lands with that age group, regardless of what generation it is, especially in generations raised in the technology era. So yeah, it works. I'm not going to be worried about just like I'm not going to panic about Texas recruiting in June, July, August, even really September. I'm not going to get overly excited.
Yeah.
Because like you said, this is a big commitment, but this is guys already flipped once, and guys flip multiple times all the time in recruiting. And he's going to get actively recruited. Other teams are going to offer him bigger bags. It's just that's how recruiting works right now. But it is a big commitment just to keep kind of momentum going, because this class does have some really high end players in it. Bel is in there, which we'll talk about him either later today or tomorrow. He's kind of one of the big highlights of the class, I would say. Now you get a 5-star edge. They obviously are going after, number one linebacker in the country. I know they're going after the number one defensive lineman in the country. They're going for a lot of big fish, just like they did last year. And at times last year, it felt like maybe that strategy would backfire, and it didn't. Yeah. And I fully trust Sarkisian and his staff to pull down a top 3 class. And this little stretch of days does help support that. But again, at the same time, I just trust that he's going to close it out strong, regardless of what happens between now and really the start of the football season.
Big time weekend for Coach Kenny Baker and his staff. Vodney Bel, 4-star defensive lineman. Again, as I before mentioned, decommitted from Alabama back in December. Chose Texas over the weekend over the likes of Bill Belichick Jordan over at UNC, Florida, and Georgia. And so Kenny Baker put in some work, Jake. This guy.
And again, another guy that two weeks into his tenure, I saw people going, he's not Bo Davis. And it's like, let the guy breathe for a second.
Has the guy put in more work than any other staff member on this?
His recruiting has been a
transfer portal or recruiting. This dude has been just on fire.
Not only did he develop think about how much better Bill Norton was at the end of the season compared to the start of the season. At the start of the season, he could hardly get on the field. By the end of the season, he was a key contributor.
Yeah.
And Alex January's, kind of development, he was able to play some meaningful snaps in the playoffs because he developed so much throughout the season. So to me, he's already showing how much he can develop guys in season. But as far as a recruiter goes, he has been a complete upgrade over Bo Davis. Yeah. That was Bo Davis's weakest part. He was a great developer and he was a great culture builder. He was not a very good recruiter. Yeah. And I think a lot of Texas fans forget that.
Bo Davis served his time and what we needed him for in terms of getting that transition from the Tom Herman era into the Sark era, like you mentioned, with the culture. The obviously the famous viral bus video will live in infamy forever, and I love the edits that Texas fans make of that edit. I'm a big supporter of Bo Davis, but what Kenny Baker has done with this defensive line is just unreal. And the work that he's put in to build the roster and to put the players in place, I've been extremely impressed. And we still have the likes of Justice Terry, who he also went viral for taking a picture with his shirt off and was like, yeah, by the way, this kid's a freshman. And dude looks like Tyron Smith.
They make them different now. I mean, more and more kids are getting on these training programs in high school, and not only that, but just how they eat, changing everything to get ready for pro football, not even just college football, but get ready for pro football. And Vodney Cleveland, by the way, has that makeup as well. I mean, he is a big body. And what impresses me too about Sark and his staff is they aren't just relying on the state of Texas. They are going out and getting the top recruits from all over the country. They're getting big guys from Georgia, from Alabama, from Louisiana, from California. They're from Florida. They're hitting all the best football states, not
Yeah.
just Texas.
Yep.
Because this year I've heard a lot of recruiting analysts talk about it this year being a little bit of a down year for the state of Texas at a lot of positions, and that's where having pipelines in multiple states really pays off, and I think it will pay off big time for Texas in this recruiting class when it's all said and done.
Look at some of the top recruits in this last year's class. They didn't all come from the state of Texas. And so the fact that Sark and his staff are really kind of branching out and kind of utilizing all of SEC country, now that they're supposed to be competing with the likes of LSU, they're dipping into Louisiana. Now that they're competing with Georgia, they're going to the state of Georgia and finding these guys like a Justice Terry. They're going into Alabama and taking recruits away from the Crimson Tide and from Auburn. And guess what? The best way to beat your conference and beat your opponents is take the best talent away from them out of high school. And that's what it seems like Texas is currently doing right now. And I love the strategy. And obviously you're going to have some teams that are going to go all in certain years, like Ole Miss did a year or two ago. Florida did this last offseason. They're just going all in on the NIL. A&M did with that historically busted recruiting class, but still a historical recruiting class nonetheless that lasted maybe a whole 2 years of having those guys still on the team. But you're going to get that. But as long as Texas stays consistent with how they're recruiting and the states and the pipelines in which they're developing in the SEC, man, I would say that the sky's the limit, but there's footprints on the moon, and we might be seeing something pretty special in terms of where this recruiting is going to ultimately end up under Sarkisian after he's already landed his first number one class in the country back in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern about this class is the fact that Texas can't really sell on early playing time at many positions right now.
No,
that is the weakest sell Texas has right now. It's a good problem to have, but other teams are going to be able to recruit going, hey, if you go to Texas, you're going to wait a year or two to play. You could play a little earlier here.
One of my favorite things, though, is that Sark did have that one season under Saban, and that was a problem that Alabama always had, and he was able to kind of be like, how did he get these guys to commit to the program knowing that they had 2-3 years to wait, especially that quarterback room or the running back room?
Yeah. And I think that's where it comes down to mental evaluations and how you evaluate players fitting in your culture that are going there, not only for the NIL money, because that does play a role in this. There's no, footing, going around that. The money matters. And so you're going to have to match what other schools are offering. But everyone's doing that. So then can you make your culture stand out over other things? And that's one thing recruits consistently talk about right now with Texas is that Texas has a little bit different of a feel. And it's nice to hear that just because we've all felt it as Texas fans since Sarkisian took over. Year one was rough, but you felt it starting to build after that year one. And then it's just continued to build and build. And when these players are leaving Texas, they're not just talking about they're not talking about the NIL money. They're talking about the development. They're talking about the coaches from a personal level. They're talking about the relationships they build there. In Texas being a special place. Just go listen to Matthew Golden talk about it. Go listen to Kelvin Banks talk about it. Go listen to all these players that just got drafted. Jahdae Barron especially talk about it. Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. I mean, there is a real culture at Texas, and that still plays a role in recruiting, despite that whenever you lose a recruit, you just go, well, they paid more money. Culture does play a role in things as well.
No, you're 100% correct, Jake. Just real quickly, before we get to Bel and the performance he put on this weekend at the Elite 11 camp, Tyler Atkinson, number one linebacker, visited Texas. Not that we're breaking news on that. Apparently, by all reports, saying that visit went well. Man, what an addition to an already stacked position group at Texas would he be, especially to come step right in. Oh, we're going to lose Ant Hill to the NFL draft. Oh, well, how about a little Tyler Atkinson for you to replace him?
Well, and Ty Anthony Smith, who was a
Yeah.
very high recruit from last year, that is going to keep getting better. And I know the staff is very, very high on him. You have, a Brad Spence, who is a multiple year transfer that, is going to be able to step in. And you have a Bo
Bo
Barnes,
Barnes. I was about to
who
say Bo
who
Barnes.
you just brought in, another high level recruit. I mean, it is becoming very much, and that's why they're still, typically with how much Texas lost the year before this year, going into just last season, the offensive line returning and quarterback returning and some of those things made people confident, but they still lost a lot of players to the draft that year. Typically that would have told you that a team was going to fall off. Obviously the Alabamas, the Georgias have been able to avoid that. Now they won the national titles. That's the difference between them and Texas right now.
Yeah.
But Texas was able to have just as successful of a season last year. And now you got kind of the same thing. A lot of, you have a lot of national heads talking about, well, Texas lost so much. Can they be that good again? And I think Texas will prove again that they are, here to stay as a contender, because they have this just turn of talent, that you have one NFL guy leaving, you have another guy who's going to be NFL ready within a year stepping in his place.
All right, Jake, Longhorn commit Bel wins the MVP at the Elite 11 camp. Here's a list of previous MVP winners of this Elite 11 camp. And just stop me whenever you haven't heard one of these names before. Cade Klubnik, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Jackson Arnold, which you might have a little bit of an asterisk there, but Spencer Rattler and Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa. Just the list goes on of guys who have won this MVP of this Elite 11 camp, and Bel adds his name to that list. And it'll be very interesting to see going forward what type of impact that he is going to have at his Texas career following Arch Manning.
Yeah, we kind of talked about the lineage of Texas quarterbacks a week or so ago, because you have one of Philip Rivers' 50 sons looking at going to Texas, and you go, could you have a lineage that goes from and this isn't even bringing in a Trey Owens and KJ Lacey into the talk, who are also both very talented guys.
Mm-hmm.
But, just as far as names with parents that have been famous professional athletes, going from an Arch Manning to a Bel to a Rivers, that would be unbelievable. But Bel, the first Texas Longhorn commit to win the Elite 11 MVP. Yeah. The Elite 11 obviously hasn't been around forever, but still, the first one, and there's no surprise that didn't happen until Steve Sarkisian was the head coach at Texas.
Shocker. Yeah, shocker there. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Bel can do. Obviously, you still have a guy like KJ Lacey and a Trey Owens, which, hopefully this season you don't have to see a Trey Owens take the field, or even next year, because you and I both believe that Arch Manning will be returning, and I believe that will be the year that Trey Owens is going to say, all right, guys, I appreciate the 3 years that you gave me here, but I think it's time that I transfer. And rightfully so. For me, Trey Owens, if he doesn't get his time as the starting quarterback at the University of Texas, it'd be very much like a Malik Murphy, where it's like, love your time here. Thanks for what you did. No hard feelings, but you absolutely deserve a chance to go play and showcase your ability somewhere else. Especially with the likes of a KJ Lacey and a Bel coming in as even his backups.
Yeah. But Trey Owens is a guy that you sit 3 years, yes, but one of those is a red shirt. He could stick around and be really good. And that to me is going to be the really interesting thing is we've seen Sark do it at Alabama. And we've seen him do it a little bit with Arch Manning sticking around, but I think everyone knew that was just always going to be the case. Mm-hmm. Now it's a little bit more of an unknown, because we don't know what Trey Owens' plan is, what KJ Lacey's plan is, and how it's all going to work out. Especially when an Arch Manning decides to potentially stay.
And then it might come down to, they both know that they're going to sit behind Arch. So let's have Arch finish out his career, whether that be 1 or 2 years here at as the starter. But then when it comes down to KJ Lacey and Trey Owens, whoever wins that starting role, the one on the short end of it, who's going to be the backup, might say, all right, well, now I'm going to be the one that transfers. And that could be either one of those two guys. Or maybe they just stay. They're not in the same recruiting class. Maybe, maybe it is a Mac Jones, a Tua, Jalen Hurts type situation where you've got all three of those guys in your same locker room and they all three get a chance to start for your team.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'd love to be in the room and hear what Sarkisian kind of talks to them about. Because I know that from reports from players, Sark himself has said it on the Josh Pate interview that he did. And it's been talked about from people within the program that Sark's very honest with the players when they have their evaluations.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder what his evaluations are of a Trey Owens right now, of a KJ Lacey after his first, he's only dipped his toes in the water, but still kind of see what those evaluations are. We don't really get to hear those as fans. We get to get little bits and pieces from insiders in the program. But it's going to be fun to see how the quarterback room plays out over these next, 2 to 4 to 5 years, because they have all the talent kind of loaded up. Yep. But how's it all going to play out? We know how this year's going to play out. We know very likely what we think how the year after that will play out. But then how does the year or two after that play out? Yeah. Will it just go straight? Will Trey Owens get a year? And then KJ Lacey get a year? And then Bel get a year? Is that how it works out? Kind of like you said with Alabama? Or is it maybe one guy that's younger just ends up sticking out so much that the other guys are gone? Right. And then he starts for a couple of years, which could very well be a KJ Lacey even.
Here's the thing, Jake. I think Texas is in really good hands no matter what situation plays out.
As long as Steve Sarkisian is at the University of Texas, they are in a very good situation.
I agree.
Because that to me is my biggest concern about the future of Texas football is keeping Sark at Texas and not in the NFL.
Yeah,
because I don't worry about him going. I don't worry about him going to another college program at all. I don't think anyone at Texas would. The only concern is him leaving for the NFL. I don't think that happened until after national title, but they win a national title this year or next year. I want him to stay for the next 20 years and have a Saban run.
Contract. Yeah, I'd like a lifetime contract with him. But
get the Bill Self KU contract going.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all right there with you 100%. With that being said, though, those NFL teams, man, they are willing to pay a lot of money, and they probably would. And I believe Steve Sarkisian, especially with him already dipping his toe in the NFL once before in his coaching career, I think he wants to get to the NFL level at some point and maybe be a head coach and try to coach a team to a Super Bowl. Why wouldn't he? And so I'm not totally opposed. One of his biggest role models in his coaching career is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was one of the very few coaches to ever have success at both the college and NFL level and winning championships. And I think Steve Sarkisian is kind of built within that same cloth as a Pete Carroll is. And so it wouldn't surprise me if one day, I just want it to be like 10, 15, 20 years down in the future.
Yeah, I hope if he's going to go to the NFL, I hope it's the Pete Carroll route. Win a bunch of national championships at Texas, then go. You win 2 to 3 national titles at Texas. I don't think anyone's going to get upset at that. I mean, there will be people that are upset because that's just how it works. Yeah. But I think most Texas fans would not just freak out over it. They would, send him out with love and graciousness for what he did at the program. And hopefully at that point, maybe he, after he wins one, he gets someone on the staff he really likes that he starts to kind of, mentor and hopefully kind of raise up to be the kind of coach in waiting. Obviously that doesn't always work out. I think Alabama's plan was Steve Sarkisian to be the coach in waiting. And then he got an offer from Texas, and that's just not something you turn down. But that would be the perfect world, because I don't think there is much of a world where he doesn't end up in the NFL at some point if he has the success at Texas that we think he's going to continue to have, just because I think he's been fairly open that the NFL does interest him in the future, but he has championships to win first with where he's at.
100%. Let's go ahead and wrap up the show there, put a button in it, and we will continue our conversation for tomorrow. Jake, A great episode. Again, Texas Longhorn off-season talk will continue as the sports calendar is basically coming to an end with the College World Series. Again, we do want to acknowledge that LSU did win the College World Series over Jake's Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, and we will discuss that more in tomorrow's episode. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.